Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under my belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. As I said, I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio in Silicon Valley. So with that, I'd like to meet my incredible guest today is Joshua Yang. He's a Phi Beta Kappa, Tau Beta Pi, and Summa Cum Laude graduate from the University of California, San Diego. He attended in a fully funded scholarship at the Jacobs School. He double majored in bioengineering and biotechnology, and where he was a Barry Goldwater Scholar and the Valedictorian in the Department of Bioengineering. He completed a Master's in Translational Medicine through the University of California, San Francisco, and the University of California, Berkeley, in the Department of Bioengineering, where he spun his first startup, Nephrosant, which raised over $22 million in funding to commercialize the low-cost, non-invasive diagnostic assay for kidney injury. He took a leave from absence for a fully funded, now get this, MD-PhD MSTP program at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and Department of Biomedical Engineering to pursue a biotech entrepreneurship. He graduated with an MBA and Certificate in Public Management and Social Innovation from Stanford Graduate School of Business, where he was the Valedictorian, a Siebel Scholar, and an Arjay Miller Scholar. So with that, I'd like to bring Joshua. Joshua, man, is the only thing you did in your life was study or what? Like, seriously. I think you're on mute. Hold on a second. Let me just get this. Can you hear me, Joshua?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. So what's the deal here? Were you now when you were like 6 years old, were you reading books and like playing the piano? What was the deal here? Now tell me about it.
Yeah, I was interested in everything, reading books, playing piano. Actually, violin was my main instrument, although I did also play the piano. I was just fascinated by everything and anything. And so really wanted to study and learn and soak up all that information.
So how did it go? So how did you go down through, as you're going down through this journey? So when you're like 8 years old, what was it like being 8 years old and being inquisitive and sharp like you are? What was it like? How did you relate to the other students?
Well, I remember very specifically one memory in third grade where we were about to learn times tables, right? Like multiplication. And my parents had already taught me all of the times tables. And so I told my teacher this, and then she didn't believe me. So she just started quizzing me live. And then, of course, I did answer all of them correctly. So I just had to sit there, though, in class while everyone else was learning times table, already having learned it. And so
how did that feel?
It was, I'm sure I was quite bored at the time. But, that's why I decided to extracurricularly pursue a lot of this, education outside of school. And so participating in all sorts of different clubs, reading lots of books, textbooks of my grade level, all of these things to supplement my education.
And so what were your parents' backgrounds?
So my mom and my dad both actually immigrated to the U.S. And then eventually my mom became a doctor and my dad became a PhD scientist.
So they taught you the times table. Now, how important do you think that was that early thrust forward for them, teaching you before, so that when you came into the classroom, you already know those? Did that help you? Did it help you want to learn more once you had that feeling?
Yeah, I think, there's the feeling of striving and being successful in striving and having already, in this specific example, learned the times tables and then seeing that I was successful at it, just makes you want to strive harder and become even more successful.
No, that's great. And so as you started down this journey, did you graduate school early or not?
I skipped a grade early in the elementary school years. I did a Montessori style school where you go at your own pace essentially. And then I also started taking some community college classes while I was in high school as well. So,
and did that help?
Those credits all transferred over, so I was able to double major, take all the additional fun classes that I wouldn't have taken otherwise. I took advanced salsa, which eventually led to me competing in salsa performances. I did musical theater, choir, all of these classes that if I had not had all of these additional credits in advance, those times would have been taken by just your basic classes.
Wow, that's great. And so when you went through this journey, how was it? So you went to, as you started at the University of California, what is a master's degree? I don't even see a bachelor's degree here. Where'd you get your bachelor's degree?
That was at University of California, San Diego, or UCSD. So
I see. And then, so what is a master's degree in translational medicine? What the heck is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fairly new type of degree. There are multiple schools in the US that offer it across the country. And it's a degree that focuses on taking scientific technologies, such as that one a scientist would develop at the bench, which is what you call the lab, the bench, and learning how to take technologies out of the laboratory and to the marketplace and to patients. So everything about biotechnology, biomedical sciences, that is not the actual science itself. So this includes aspects like intellectual property, FDA regulatory affairs, clinical trial design, all of these different elements.
And can I just have a question. Why in the heck did you go for 2 master's degrees in translational medicine? How did that happen?
No, I should say it was a jointly offered degree. So
I was going to say, did you get bored and say, "Oh, I'm going to just test it and compare these two"?
No, it was a thoughtfully designed program that where UCSF, right, UC San Francisco, has one of the top medical hospitals in the world, and UC Berkeley has one of the strongest bioengineering programs in the world, and so by combining forces, those two schools could offer a education in this translational medicine area that either school themselves would not be able to provide the full breadth of education.
And so then, why did you decide to go to Johns Hopkins? And then so you became a medical doctor, and then you got a PhD. Was it hard going with a course is hard? So if you're studying, was it double the coursework, or did some of the medical courses apply to the biomedical engineering program?
Yeah. I should say the timing was sort of overlapping in that I had applied for this MD-PhD combined program back when I was an undergrad. But the way that medical school applications work is that generally when you apply, there's a 1-year gap between when you apply and when you start. And so that was the gap year in which I did this Master of Translational Medicine program. And so by the time I had started that program, I already knew that I was going to go to do medical school. And so I did that 1-year master's program, and then I started the MD-PhD program. And yeah, it's not fully a double course load, where some of the classes from both programs do transfer over to the other degree. So you're not killing yourself while doing it. But I did definitely take some medical school classes at the same time as taking PhD classes just to speed things up.
And then, so when you went down through that, did you have much of a social life?
Yeah, no, I had, I think, a very vibrant social life, I would say. I don't think I could be as productive or as, probably successful as I have been so far, if not for the friends and colleagues that, have made that journey itself enjoyable.
So have you been a practicing doctor? Do you work in the hospital today?
No. So I ended up taking a leave of absence halfway through. So I did the first 2.5 years of med school. And then I did half of the PhD. So all of the coursework for the PhD, started my research in the laboratory. And then halfway through, my time at that Master of Translational Medicine program like sort of stuck with me, thinking about taking innovation to patients, to the marketplace. And I thought to myself that in that period of my life, going through this MD-PhD program, which minimum is, generally 7 years, on average, probably closer to 9 years, perhaps that I wanted to take this time of my life to focus on innovation now. And so I ended up taking a leave of absence to go focus first on my first startup, Nephrosant, and then eventually to do an MBA to gain the business skills and network necessary to then continue pursuing those biotech startup dreams.
Now, can you go back and go to medical school again? Can you go back in the program if you take a leave of absence?
Yeah, so I'm currently still able to go back. I'm still on this indefinite leave of absence, but I am able to go back still at this point.
Are you going to do it?
Of course, it depends how the future turns out. I won't rule it out, but at this moment, it doesn't seem like there's sort of a window of opportunity, right? Where I'm currently, of course, co-founder and CEO of my current startup, running that full time. I could not foresee a world in which I could do that and do, the clinical rotations in medical school at the same time.
Interesting. All right. So you went down through that, and how in the world did you go to Insight to be a venture capital fellow? Now, was that after Stanford or before?
During. So, yeah. So, I had never even heard of the world of finance before, right? As you commented earlier, it seems like I've been studying my whole life, and the studying has largely been in, engineering, biology, medicine. And so I remember when I applied for the MBA program, got into the MBA program at Stanford and attended one of their admit days. I met a lot of my fellow admits and I was just introducing myself. I'm like, hi, I'm Josh, currently a medical student at Hopkins. What do you do? And one person was like, I'm in PE. And I'm like, oh, yes, physical education, of course.
Yeah. Did you ask?
I literally had never heard of private equity before business school.
Did you say, what do you like? Are you into aerobics or, is there something special? Field hockey?
I can tell you that she was not very amused by my my lack of knowledge of her, profession.
You're being sarcastic, That's. When you're in pretty good shape, did you say that to her too?
Yeah. So
I gotta tell a mile away, you're in pretty good shape. Yeah, that's how you get started in a relationship. That's great. I love it. So she ended up going to Stanford too, and we ended up being good friends actually. So,
yeah, to answer your question though, right? Like before business school, I had absolutely no sense of how the world of finance and investments worked. And so going to do these various fellowships in the world of venture and growth equity was sort of my way to experientially learn about how, the other side of the table worked, right? Like how one decides to make investments, what makes a good investment, all of that.
What are some of the secrets? What are 3 secrets that you learned?
I don't know if we wouldn't say there's any secrets per se. I think storytelling is probably one of the best abilities that you have. I think there are many times I've heard investors say wow, this company would have already had, a term sheet if only they were better at telling their story, right? And so storytelling is one of the key things where, many people raise hundreds of millions on a story alone, right? And so your ability to tell a story is probably one of the most important determinants of whether you get funding or not, especially at the pre-seed or seed stage when it's very likely you have little traction or little, in this case of, the scientific sort of startups like biotech, little data to support your product or whatever you are pursuing. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things.
So what do you think? How important is it on a 1 to 10 scale?
Definitely a 10. I think it'd be very difficult to, obviously if you have, I'd say 10 out of 10 because even if you're not a very good storyteller, then perhaps if you have a case where your company sells itself, right? If you have huge revenues, like huge annual recurring revenue, and low costs, right? And in getting there because you bootstrapped your way there. That itself is a story that it tells its own story there, right? Versus in many cases, you have to create the story for the investors to understand. And so no matter what, I would say it's always important.
So what do you think if you had, so you got a great storyteller, then you have traction. If you have a great storyteller without traction, would you be more inclined to invest in that company, or if a company has traction but the story person's not a good storyteller?
Yeah, I mean that's a hard balance. Definitely, it depends. If it's like super early stage company where you don't necessarily expect them to have traction, right? I think that would be fine. In the reverse case, where perhaps the CEO, the founder, is not very good at telling the story, but clearly the fundamentals of the business are good, then I think that's also something that could potentially be fixed, right? With coaching, with even just a storytelling workshop, right, where the founders go and learn. I think it's a skill, right? It's not something that's just sort of innate. It can learn how to be a better storyteller, and I think those are things that can be fixed as well.
Yeah, no, I had some friends when I was young that were real good storytellers. Not necessarily the truth. I remember some of those wild stories that they would tell their parents too. Those were the days. So you went to Pear VC, you're a venture capital fellow. And I see a lot of these. You went to CX. Why did you go to so many? You went to Bain? Well, did it just like say, oh, now I'm going to do this? I think I like learning about storytelling, and I'm going to go to these places. And why in the world did you pick Boston, Massachusetts, by the way?
Well, to be fair, that was sort of during COVID, so I was able to do that one mostly remotely. But Boston, I should say, right, so this is Bain Capital Life Sciences, so their life sciences division, which essentially is run independently from Bain Capital, where they do all the other types of investments like crypto and others. And Boston is one of the top biotech hubs in the nation. Right? If you think about where all the biopharma companies, novel biotech platform companies are, many of them spin out of or based in Boston, and so it makes sense to be where the action is. And yeah, so I did all of these different ones. One to learn different styles of investing, right? Some are very much like gut oriented, some action, and then some do, especially later stage ones like Bain Capital Life Sciences. They do all the financial modeling to ensure that the investment is sound, right, in terms of the returns that they could potentially be making. And so definitely was good to see a spectrum.
So, and then the 21 fund, what's that all about?
Yeah, so this started in the year before me, actually, at Stanford Business School. But all of these students, super smart, talented, huge networks across their various fields, right? Many of the students themselves come from finance. Many have consulting backgrounds at the top consulting firms. Many have experience in sales, customer support, marketing, every domain. And students thought to themselves, like, why don't we start our own, investing firm where we invest into our fellow classmates' startups. And then each of these startups has access to a vast network of 400 students that, it's likely that at least one will have the skills or the knowledge of how to solve a problem that maybe one of these startups will encounter during, their journey. And so, the fund is essentially fully funded in terms of like the LPs of the fund. All comes from the students, and they then invest as sort of like an index fund into the investments of the class. And in fact, if you look at the history of Stanford Graduate School of Business startups, in every single class year, I believe it's over like a 6 or 7 year period consecutively, I think starting in 2013 or 2012, there's at least been one unicorn, or at least one, in every single class. So, right, if you think that can extrapolate on to continue to like current classes or future classes, right, and you invest as an index fund into every single startup that the class has, then it's possible you'll get that one hit and return the fund for all of your classmates.
No, that's fantastic. And then, so you did that, you're still in that. Now, what about Nephrosant? How did you come up with that? When did that, because you were working on that for 6 years, early detection of kidney diseases. And what's the state of that right now? Are you still running it, or I know it says that you're got some involvement as a co-founder, but what are you doing with that now?
Yeah, well, so I on LinkedIn, right? I think co-founder status is sort of permanent, right? It's not so much a role as it is a title, right? Where, of course, if you start the company, then will have always been the person or persons that started the company, right? So that's why it's listed that way. I don't have a very much active involvement at all today. But that started way back, actually, during the master's program that I talked about, the Master of Translational Medicine program, where that program, right, as mentioned, we learned about intellectual property, regulatory affairs, clinical trial design, all of these things. You learn about that didactically in the classes, but you also half of it is experiential, where you have a capstone project and where you work to take an idea and flesh it out further. And many times students are able to take these ideas and then after the program, launch startups from it. And so this is an example of that, where I joined a project that a UCSF professor was starting on kidney transplant rejection diagnosis, because almost 15% of all kidney transplants will undergo a rejection episode, where if you receive the transplant, Gary, your body would recognize that organ as foreign and would attack it. And so you have to take really highly immunosuppressive drugs to make sure your body doesn't reject it. But many times patients forget to take their meds, and eventually your body might, then be able to recognize it as foreign and attack it. And so we created a diagnostic test that could detect when these episodes would occur. And that was sort of a, coalescing of all of the learnings I had in that master's program. And we actually then were able to launch a startup, in this case, Nephrosant, from that, to then go ahead and develop and pursue the approval of the technology further. And so I was one of the inventors of the actual core technology in the lab. I was running the assay, right, running the diagnostic tests on all these patient urine samples, and we were able to get the test to work remarkably well, actually.
Wow, that's great. And so, how did you come up with Glyphic? And why in the world did you move to New York City? I mean,
yeah,
out there where the weather's like normal. Why did you just say, "Well, I need more action. I want to hang out. I got my friends"? Or what's the deal with New York?
Well, I split my time, right? I'm traveling probably more than half the time in any given month, and so I do spend a lot of time in, the Bay Area still, where I visit Palo Alto pretty often. Of course, do spend a lot of time in New York as well. But when I was in business school, right, 2019 to 2021, that was essentially when COVID hit, right? It started school in September 2019, and then what was it, December, November of 2019 when COVID, or January, February when COVID hit, and we had to spend all of the business school sort of classes virtually. And so I think
Wow, how was that? How was that with the experience? Was that hard?
I actually found it really enjoyable because, we were able to spend time, and instead of, it was a different experience, and I found it enjoyable. I have nothing to compare it to because I, don't have this alternative universe where, I had a normal business school experience. But, at least, what people say is that in business school, you go travel to international destinations with hundreds of your classmates at a given time. Of course, none of that was happening during COVID, right? But I would travel with smaller groups of like 15 people, going to smaller Airbnbs at local destinations in the Bay Area, and built a really close community of people. And so I had a really great experience during that time, and some of those people are friends that I still regularly hang out with today. And so it was definitely not the experience that I anticipated. I'm sure those entire 3-year period was an experience that no one anticipated, but it was definitely something that was worked out really well for me. And I think being in Palo Alto, which, as you yourself said, is sunny, very nice, lots of outdoor areas, I think that was sort of the perfect place to be during the pandemic, right? Versus maybe New York City, where You're stuck in your apartment all day, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but after 3 years or 2 years, right, and being in Palo Alto, and there's only so much suburban life that I wanted in my 20s, and so I decided that moving to the city would be a better sort of a change in my life that I could was interested in exploring.
Well, that's great. And so tell us a little bit about, was it Glyphic Biotechnology? So how did you come up with that? You're decoding the human proteome through full coverage, de novo protein sequencing at a single molecule resolution or resolutions. So how did you come up with that idea? Would you get one of your books and say, I got something that I'm thinking like decoding this stuff. It's kind of cool. Or how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah. So I should say this one was, in fact, my co-founder, and who is our CTO. He came up with this idea, and we met. Again, this is a fortunate outcome for us from the COVID-19 pandemic. But I met him only because of the pandemic. We met on this virtual co-founder speed dating platform where they try to match business students with scientists who have a technology or an idea, and then together they pair people to validate the idea to see whether it could be commercially viable. And this program existed before the pandemic, but was only offered ever in the Boston area. And so because COVID happened, they opened it up to be nationwide virtually that year. And so I was able to partake in this program. I met my co-founder. We hit it off very quickly, right? We met in December of 2020. And by March of 2021, we had incorporated the company already. So
wow,
it happened really fast.
Have you raised money for that company?
Yes. So yes, we've raised, so far, we raised a seed round in 2021 and then an extension round in 2022, and are now raising our Series A. So yeah, we have raised a good amount of money to help support the research efforts in developing our single molecule protein sequencing platform.
No, that's fantastic. So, we're coming up to the top of the show. So closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you?
If you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at joshua@glyphic.bio, GLYPHIC.bio. Or you visit our website at glyphic.bio, and there's a form to contact us there. Closing thoughts, I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for this time today, Gary. So great chatting.
Good seeing you today. Thanks for taking the time. Joshua has a busy schedule. And thanks to all of you for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back at you again next Tuesday for another exciting edition. Take care, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Thanks, Joshua.
Bye.